What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and another movement skill short story this week for week 8 of the 2025 NFL season. And this one feels a little bit like deja vu, and it's gonna be rewinding us back to about 2021 when Jonathan Taylor was my mover of the year in that season, and he was solving problems in highly adaptable and attuned fashions. He was able to connect to information sources, almost playing chess versus checkers in comparison to his peers. And that's exactly what we're seeing from JT right now. Of course, I featured him earlier in this season with a movement play of the week, and I want to feature him again, and it's obviously for good reason. He just had his third hat trick day, meaning 3 touchdowns on the day, and he's en route of a really record-breaking season as long as he stays healthy. But the way that he's solving movement problems is that which what is fascinating that we can really lean in on in trying to inform us as to how we might be able to, as coaching practitioners, set similar alive movement problems for players to solve where we might be able to channel and facilitate similar movement skills is what we're witnessing from Jonathan Taylor. And when I say similar, I mean obviously loosely speaking and highly individualized for the performer. Now, the play I'm going to feature here today is one that isn't his 80-yarder where he broke it down the sideline, or it isn't one that was like this big game-breaking type of touchdown. However, what it is awfully nuanced and awfully skillful. And because of that, I wanted to feature it. So let's get in on it a few times. 100% speed here, as Jonathan Taylor, like NFL.com says there, bobs and weaves his way to pay dirt. Now, again, on the surface, probably doesn't look like a lot, but I don't want you to miss the forest through the trees here. This is super attuned, super skillful, and I'm going to try to point out the reasons as to why. And then I want to show us as to what we might be able to look at from enhancing skill in American football and that which what I do in my own learning environment might be able to be leveraged to set similar problems as what we see unfolding here for Jonathan Taylor. So get him ball in hand and kind of think, if you would, with me for a moment as we get to 50% speed, how we might be able to set up this type of movement problem. First and foremost, I mentioned Enhancing Skill in American Football, our new book released in September. Myself, Tyler Yearby, and Rob Gray, my colleagues here on the book. But in the book, if you go to chapter 6, if you have the book, we talk about problem setting across all positions. And one of my very favorite positions, if you followed me here at Football Beyond the Stats, to train is running backs. And the reason is we can set up alive movement problems to channel their skill in ways that typically in indie periods and the like, teams just aren't setting. They're often setting cone drills or footwork type of activities around bags to try to simulate that which what we're seeing here. Guys and gals, as I talked about last week, that is not enough. That just doesn't do it. One does not equate to the other. Correlation does not equal causation. But if you go to chapter 6 in our book, on page 159, increasing complexity and representative task design, turn to the next page, and you're going to see on page 160 us talk about open field traffic navigation in a tunnel. You're going to see us another page later, 2 pages, excuse me, talk about traffic navigation with teammate blocker dyads. We also talk about traffic navigation with teammate opponent layers. All of those activities highly relevant to setting the tone and channeling that which what we might find on this type of practice activity. I do a lot of traffic navigation in our learning environment. I'm going to start it from here where Jonathan Taylor has the ball in hand. And we typically are going to do that for 10 to about 15 yards long. So if we put the line to gain here at the 10-yard sticks, because it is 1st and 10, And then let's just think about us putting a cone maybe here, or we're going to do that right out along the numbers. So usually hash to numbers is a workspace we utilize. We will also use hash to hash as we might here to there, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. We will use, and one space is obviously just a little smaller than the other, but we do a lot of this in a tunnel of usually anywhere from 4 to 8 yards wide and then 10 to 15 yards long, sort of as you saw me draw here. And then let me just get a different arrow out to depict Jonathan Taylor. And then we're going to have this guy work through the space however it is that he needs to based on where opponents and or teammates are positioned and how they're behaving. We often start this in a very passive manner where we're actually just going to put players moving randomly, sort of in a differential learning type of fashion. They're neither opponent or teammate. They're just moving as traffic obstacles in that running back has to navigate the space. We will use this for quarterbacks as well. Sometimes wide receivers, but we'll open the space even more, or tight ends and we'll open the space even more. And then we go into active. And again, these are things that I think running back coaches can and should do. In fact, it's inexcusable not to do in indie periods. Get rid of the cone drills, get rid of the slalom drills, get rid of the bags, and instead get alive movement problems for your running backs to solve. Now, in that traffic navigation or traffic navigation with blocker and teammate dyads or traffic navigation where we're going to interact with a blocker engagement, which is exactly sort of what unfolds and happens here, the player will be able to become very attuned and adaptable to the what is in a what is that is very chaotic and highly unpredictable. Remember, alive movement problems, unpredictable, indeterminate. We don't know how they're going to unfold regardless of how the opponent and or teammates are positioned. So what might Jonathan Taylor, let me get my arrow back, be attuned and sensitive to if we take him back to 2021 and why he was my mover of the year? And I'm seeing similar stuff from him now. In fact, I tweeted out this play on Sunday talking about how reminiscent it actually was of that 2021 season. Here, in these types of scenarios and situations, especially if we do it in a repetition without repetition fashion, where the player is repeating that process of solving a problem by adjusting and changing degrees of freedom and nuances, perceptually, what they're looking at, when they're looking at it, what it means to them, cognitively, meaning their intentional aims to act in a given way, moment by moment, based on what's unfolding, and ultimately, adaptively coordinating their actions, adjusting themselves on the fly. Immerse your players in these types of learning environments, and that's exactly what's going to unfold. He's going to be connected and sensitive to interpersonal distance here. He's going to be sensitive to posture and kinematics. And then likely, in my opinion, he's going to combine that with, and this is what one of the things that Jonathan Taylor does in traffic better than almost any back playing in the game today, maybe only to be rivaled by a guy like a Bijan Robinson currently, maybe a Nick Chubb 3 and 4 years ago. But really, that's a short list. Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and that's about it right now in traffic in this type of tight space. And then that allows him to not be overly attached. Remember, Wuxin is our theme this year, a lack of attachment, a no-mindedness to a certain way of doing, being, and acting. That's what we see here, guys and gals. He's not trying to force square peg, round hole. He just flows like water, and we're going to see it from the other vantage and viewpoint here. And then he's able to move on from one local movement problem right into another. These nested affordances, how we behave at one time is going to flow into the very next movement problem. He's not overly attached at any moment. He's just going with the flow. Bruce Lee, be water, my friend. You can flow or you can crash. You're not overly attached. Look at him right here, and the reason why I pause this, right? One local movement problem to another. He now looks to and through. He looks and feels he's got his my bad, his left hand on his own blocker while he's looking at 25 to get a quick gauge as to how close they might be and what threat they're going to give. And if his guy with his hand on him, he can feel where he's going. That haptic and touch information is now guiding his movement actions. How fast should I move is going to be based on where 25 is and what my haptic and touch feeler is telling me about where my own guy, let me blur that or blurb that, where my own guy is going and how fast he's going to go there. Look at him in this congestion. But again, we can get players very comfortable being uncomfortable in this type of traffic congestion. I firmly believe that, and we do a lot of it. We do a traffic activity in my learning environment for my running backs and the running backs I partner with every single day. One of those three activities that I mentioned that we highlighted in the book, Enhancing Skill in American Football, that I just mentioned, and manipulate constraints around. No two problems the same. We do that on the daily. And then we find Jonathan Taylor attuned to that, stays comfortable with that. That's why it's not really about the speed or being quick to the gas pedal. Look at Jonathan Taylor in a Le'Veon Bell type of fashion, patiently wading through the waters. Really cool, nuanced stuff here. And then that allows him to get that feeler out again. Don't miss the forest through the trees here. He comes off this, puts his hand out, gets that stiff arm there, not necessarily in a physical strength oriented strategy, but instead, where is that guy? Let me keep him at bay. Think of a mixed martial arts striker, just kind of like touching and feeling. Keep that guy where I need him and behave accordingly while looking at what else he needs to do based on the threats around him. Let's see it kind of play out here. Hand feeler goes out. What's to my right? What's to my left? There, the hand goes out again. Pushes it on down. Really reminiscent of 2021, if you remember my mover of the year that year. Let's see it again. Boom. That hand feeler is always out there feeling. Where is that guy? Look at on the constant update. Let's not miss it. Left, right with the head turn. Boom. Okay. We see it right there. See him pick it up again. Look long enough to get your update, Jonathan Taylor, as to what is actually there. Now let's see it one more time from the other vantage point, from the end zone. I wish we actually had the viewpoint behind the Colts offense, but we're going to see it here behind the Tennessee Titans instead, if my slow motion ever gets us there. Okay. Think about this traffic navigation. Think about that, which what I outlined before for you. Okay. As far as the workspace size, what's going to be there. Let's see it and see him get connected to some of these informational variables. We see where the eyes are. What's our interpersonal distance? We look at this. How is this guy right here? What is his posture? What is position? Where is he going? You have to make that decision really quickly. Where is he going? He quickly determines he's coming this way. And even though it looks like he could push from left to right like that, he actually is pushing right here towards Taylor. So all Taylor does is drive this a little bit forward, and then you're going to see as I draw those arrows, take that little side step from left, or from right to left rather. And as you watch it here, boom, we talked about this in my Mover of the Year feature numerous times ad nauseum. Jonathan Taylor not attached to any respective technical model for a movement strategy. Not a power cut, not a jump cut, nothing of that sort. It's whatever works in the moment. Dexterity, guys and gals, the ability to solve any movement problem across situations and across conditions. It requires abundance and adaptability, first and foremost. And then we see some of those nuances I talked about before, now from this other vantage point, playing out really skillfully in a highly nuanced way before Jonathan Taylor en route to pay dirt again and again and again, more than anyone else, has visited the end zone. And he's on pace, obviously, towards breaking the NFL touchdown rushing record, or rushing touchdown record, rather. Hopefully, all of that makes some sense. I will put that Jonathan Taylor Mover of the Year feature from 2021 in my comments section below, so you can take a peek at that, dive into it, and see how similar those movement skills are unfolding here 4 years later. But we want to have a thought experiment to how they've become adapted through Jonathan Taylor's extra reps and attempts and injuries and the likes that he might have faced, just to see where the differences are as well. That's something I want you all to think about as you're looking at any player playing and behaving. But when we see a Jonathan Taylor in the midst of another record-breaking campaign, let's continue to think about how it is that things have changed and evolved. But for us as coaching practitioners, what we might be able to do really simply to set up some of those alive movement problems in traffic that would allow similar movement problems and solutions to emerge. Problems to be presented to the player, solutions to emerge, and a solution process to emerge, similar to that which what we saw from Jonathan Taylor, where perceptions, cognitions, and actions are all intertwined and interwoven to become one with that respective movement problem. So for Football Beyond the Stats, I'm Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi. I will talk to you all next time.